All right, everybody, we're back with another episode of Around the Draft. Joining me is my main co-host, as always, Felix and Jake here. I'm hoping to have some more of the guests with ATB come on, but it is pretty tough. We don't do this for a living, unfortunately. Maybe one day, who knows? But right now, we kind of just have to do it when we can, coming at you at 5 Eastern on Sunday. But yeah, this is going to be the interior defensive line class episode. So it's one that's kind of not gotten a ton of hype in this cycle, and I understand why. Like, there's just so many great groups. So even at edge, corner on defense, and not even talking about offense, which is just going to dominate. We think kind of, especially the early portion of this class. So, but these guys are definitely still good prospects. There's a couple guys at the top in particular, and then a lot of depth. I would say that's still going to be like in that day 2, early day 3 range the teams can take advantage of. But before jumping to our top 10 guys, just want to make sure that everybody knows that every week we're going to come back with different positional breakdowns moving forward. We're going to do edge next week, kind of get through all the positions. And then at the end of the draft cycle, right before the draft starts, try to kind of do like a final mock draft show, try to get everybody on for a little bit, maybe make that like a big long episode. And then finally, I'm going to also try to, at least the first day of the draft, maybe not the second, we'll see how that goes, but day 1 of the draft, we're going to try to go live with a bunch of guests kind of circulating in and out as we go through the first round. So be definitely a lot of fun. Definitely join us for that. But let's jump into it. So we're going to obviously 10 to 1, see how we kind of view this class, see how many guys we have in the same spots. I feel like this one might be the most different that we have, just because I haven't talked a lot about this group. It's not the headlining position, so a lot of us had to kind of dig deep to watch some of these guys. So, but Felix, I'm going to send it off to you actually first. Give us your number 10 interior defender in this class.
Cool. So happy to be back. Happy to be talking.
Yes, absolutely.
Number 10 for me is Tyler Davis.
Ooh, okay.
Clemson.
All right. Clemson guy.
I do like Tyler's game. I think I see more of not as much of a versatile defender as I think I see for like a lot of the other guys in this class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think maybe it's a little bit of a bias because I see such versatility from the rest of the class. It kind of dings him.
Right.
But I do like his motor. I do like the way that he I think I love his athletic skills for one, considering his size. I think he was on one of Feldman's Freaks.
I think you might be. That sounds right to me. I know he was kind of labeled as like that undersized, like really like quick twitch type of player. So that might be right for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think athletically he's a pretty solid bet, especially when you consider the position. It's a position where you call a guy an athlete, and it's like, yeah, but because of their size, it's
right.
Very impressive.
For sure. Yeah.
But I think a little bit one-dimensional. I think he has some inconsistencies in terms of like how he controls his blocks, his hand usage. I think there's some of that needs to get very ironed out once he gets to the pro level. But I think he has tons of potential. I find him to be great in terms of like violence and a motor. And I think the thing that really stuck out to me is that he has some like polish in terms of how he plays as a pass rusher. Like he has a good motor, and he really, really, tries to like pursue the play as much as possible, and he doesn't quit. And I think considering this is a guy who's like very much, bigger dude on the field, interior defensive line, everything like that, it's very impressive. He doesn't seem like to be a guy who's like tired out. You know what I mean? Like
right.
Player, from beginning of the game to the end. I just have him toward the bottom of the list because I think there are some technical refinements that have to happen. I think while he has that motor, I don't see the tenacity with like his hands like on a consistent basis. So I think he has to get coached up for sure. I just don't know if he has the same ceiling as some of the guys that I have above. So have him at 10.
Okay, fair enough. Now he's a guy I will admit I did not get to yet in the process, so I haven't watched any of him. I'm familiar with him, but haven't watched his games or his tapes. So, Jake, do you have him in your top 10 anywhere?
He's not in my top 10. I haven't watched him as much as some of the other guys, gotcha. But I have watched him a little bit.
Okay. Any thoughts?
One of the things, I think Felix said pretty much exactly the same thing I would say about him. One of the things I noticed definitely was his motor. He puts in the same effort every single play,
which that's big for interior guys. So.
Yeah, and with his athleticism, I think that gives him a pretty decent floor at the NFL. His hand fighting could be a little better, but one of the things I noticed was on his first initial punch, he's pretty strong. So I think that makes up for it a little bit. Yeah, I don't see his ceiling as being that high, so he wasn't in my top 10.
Gotcha.
But I also didn't watch him as much as some of the other interior D linemen. So
yeah, and that's the case. Like when you're getting down to this area, it's really easy to have just not seen the guy yet. And for me, in general, he's the type of player, just from what I've heard of, that I feel like I would really like. It's just, again, would he break my top 10? I'm not sure, because the guys I have in my top 10 I feel pretty confident about, but I'm definitely glad we have at least one guy that's going to be different that we don't all talk about at the same time. I'll jump in here. My number 10 is Mekhi Wingo out of LSU. So the undersized counterpart of Mason Smith there at LSU, kind of that dynamic duo there. It's plain and simple. He's a guy you take in the mid rounds to rush the passer and nothing else. He's 6'1", he's 290-ish. But he's also a great pass rusher, right? So he's kind of that new mold of no one's Aaron Donald, especially with him gone. That's going to be kind of a hole at that position of having greatest of all time type of player at that position. No offense to any other guys playing, Dexter Lawrence, Chris Jones, but it's just that's what teams are looking for, though. That interior presence that can just shoot gaps, that can win quickly, that have great hand usage, that can just kind of push the pocket from the middle where quarterbacks can't really escape the same way they can when they can get outside the pocket. So he's a guy that, you're not going to probably play him more than 20, 30 snaps a game, depending on what type of offense you're playing. But he's going to probably be really impactful in those 20, 30 snaps. And, at 10 here, having a guy that's a specialist like that, I think is pretty fair, because, again, in this class, not a ton of premium players. I think there's a few at the top that are definitely premium, every down type of players. Outside of them, though, you're looking for skill sets, you're looking for roles. He would fit that third down, NASCAR package type of role where you just send him out there and make a guard try to guard him or to stop him. And a lot of the time, they're just not going to be able to do it. His first step is insane. I think he had a 95th percentile 10-yard split at the combine. Just really explosive player off the snap. And just unfortunately, his size is going to limit his usage and stuff, like I said, but he still has a really important role in defenses in the modern game. So I have him at 10. Where do you guys have him at? You have him in your top 10 or outside your top 10?
He wasn't in my top 10.
Okay, gotcha. Felix, you have him in your top 10?
And this was it Wingo or was it Smith?
Wingo, yeah.
Wingo. Oh, it was Wingo. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had Wingo at 11, actually.
11. Okay, so we're almost right around the same page then. Anything you want to add then, Felix, if he was in your close to your top 10? Then?
No, I completely agree with what you said in terms of that mid-round potential guy,
right.
When you grab and specialist rush the passer. I do think he's going to be that interior pass rush specialist, and I think I feel the same way about Smith in some ways, where there's that scheme versatility and you can move him all along the line. But I do love that first step for sure. I think he's a guy that consistency was an issue when I was watching the tape. I only watched a little bit, but consistency was something I noticed down to down. It was kind of up and down. I think he seems to win frequently, but it doesn't seem like he has an array of moves. He has an expansive toolkit to use.
It's more just the hand usage and being able to win quickly with his first step, and if he doesn't, he can get washed a lot. That's one issue with him for sure.
Yeah, and you especially notice that anytime there's an opportunity where he's rushing and somebody comes in and support to kind of help them out, he's done. He's just out of the play.
He doesn't have the frame or the power. He's really that pure win quickly, affect the quarterback, and if he doesn't, he's kind of just going to be there during the play. It's very much that very limited skill set. Which again, at 10, that's kind of what I'm if I'm going to take a guy in the mid rounds, I want him to be able to do one thing at least really, really well, and that for me, at least the speed rush is there for him.
Yeah, and that's what I would say. I agree with you there, where it's you're picking him, you know what you're picking him for.
Yes, exactly.
And I think honestly, he he could take off and have like a really good start to his career. Just depends on where he lands. If he
Yeah,
lands
for
on a
sure.
team with a solid like rotation of
Yep.
guys that go through there, third down, he's just going to be a fresh body coming out and just wreaking havoc. And facing double teams and things like that isn't going to be as frequent when you have other NFL players around you. He's a rookie. They're just probably going to single him up just to start. So he'll have the opportunity to prove himself. But I see exactly why you have him at 10.
Yeah, Jake, I don't know if you got to watch him at all, Jake, or if you just didn't have him in your top 10 or.
I didn't really get a chance to watch him
that's
very
fine.
much.
Yeah.
So
I
I watched a
won't put you on
little,
the
but
spot.
yeah,
I won't put you on the spot.
not enough to have a real opinion
right.
about him.
I will say one team that I could easily see him going to and just like wreaking havoc because of how many bodies they have in the interior. Niners replacing like Kinlaw's pass rush role. I would not love that if I'm playing them in the NFC because again, like they just have all those bodies in the middle. Just throw him out there at times. Like that's all they really need him to do. So we'll go to Jake. Then who's your 10th guy then?
All right. So we might disagree a little bit on position here because he can play too, but
Gotcha.
I'm going with Brandon Dorless out of Oregon at 10.
Okay.
I have him as an inside.
Me too.
D-Lineman. I've seen a lot of people kind of categorize him as an edge rusher, and he can kind of do both. I love a lot of the things he does. He's really athletic and very quick laterally, and I think that's why I like him at interior D-line because he's much quicker than like the guards and centers that he's going up against. He has good hand moves. He can get up the field quick. He's a great athlete because I think he's a bit for an undersized class. He's pretty undersized for interior D-line.
Yeah.
But my main concern with him that has him at 10 and not higher up the list is just me being worried about him in the run game. Just because he's undersized. I didn't really, even in college, I wasn't really able to see him make too much of a difference in the run game. He's much better in the pass. And I'm a little worried about him having a true NFL home at interior D-line or edge rusher because he can do both, but he isn't like he's not elite at either one, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I'm a little worried about him not being good enough at either one to really stick in the NFL, but I love a lot of the things he does, and I think his potential could be very, very high if used correctly.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Felix, do you have him in your top 10?
Honestly, I don't have him in my top 10. And doing some of this film review, I had started on my like edge rankings, and he's not going to be in my top 10 in edge either.
Okay. All right. So do you have him as an edge though, or is he interior? Or?
I have him as interior. I think I think Jake hit the nail on the head. Like he is in my eyes, he's a tweener. I think he has, good athleticism and, explosiveness, but there isn't really flexibility. There isn't really a lot of bends. You don't see like really good agility for him to be able to play, further outside on the edge, have that sliding capability. And then I think the thing that sticks out to me too is like what Jake said, because of that tweener frame. And he's very kind of like high cut. Like he looks like he has long legs, and like compact body. Like I feel like that's going to really be a detriment to the every down potential for him to play inside. So for me, like he's probably going to end up being a good rotational player. He has, I think, he has the experience for you to sit there and say, yeah, like I could take a flyer on this guy in day 3. But yeah, personally, I just don't know. I just don't know if he has that flexibility because like, he's 285, 290.
I think he'll play around there.
Yeah. And, a guy like Mekhi Wingo, who's around the same at like 290, but Wingo's much more compact. He's only 6 feet or something like that. And Dorless is 6'3" and a half with more length. So it's like, I don't see the bend for him to come off the edge. I don't see the weights and the frame to be inside. So I just wonder, the opportunities are so far few in between at times in the NFL. It's like, where is he going to stick? And I hope I'm wrong, because I think he has the violence, he has the strength and stuff, but um, he's got really good hands. I will say that really, really high motor, real active hands. But I just wonder how often it's going to be. He's going to be able to play like down to down to down. I see him as like an interior pass rusher, and that's
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, he feels like a guy that's gonna have, at least at the start of his career, like one specific role, and I think that's just pass rushing, and probably on pass rushing downs. Because I'm just, my biggest worry with him is just playing against the run on like a down to down basis. I don't know if he'll be able to handle that.
So I will say, guys, he's 5 for me.
Wow.
He's my 5th guy, and I understand the concerns with the run defense, and I understand like the flexibility a little bit too, because I do think he's a little stiffer than I would like him to be. But I look at him and I see a guy who can legitimately rush the passer right now. He had over 70 pressures the past 2 years along the defensive line. He's a guy that I think in the run defense, I think he has enough strength in his frame to get a little bit better at that at the next level, especially if he does get up to like 285, 290 and stay there. And to me, he's a 5 tech. You put him on like in a 3-man front. He's the end guy. You can have him go up against hopefully some smaller tackles at times or weaker tackles. The run defense might not be as much of an issue. He won't go up against as many guards if you kind of slide him out there more often. And he won't be a true like edge per se, like you were saying, Felix, kind of talking about him playing at both spots, but playing closer to the edge of the defense where he's not dealing with as strong players typically in the run game. And you can just let him go off as a pass rusher because that's what I think will separate him from some of the guys that I have below him, where like they're very close. Like I'd say like 8 through 5 or even like 8 through 4 are similar levels of talent for me. They just have different strengths and weaknesses, right? Where like I think of that group, he's probably the most refined pass rusher that I'll talk about in that kind of frame of players, and that sets him a little bit ahead for me. So it's not a huge difference between like him and 7 or 8, like I said. But this type of skill set I think he could have at the next level. It's kind of like what I was hoping, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, but what like DeMarvin Leal for the Steelers, I was hoping he would be coming out of Texas A&M, I think is where, Texas A&M, where he's like a slightly smaller but athletic and very toolsy pass rusher, that type of guy can play off the edge. I'm seeing like more of, but I think Dorless showed more of that ability than I think he did coming out. So that's my role for him. I think he could be a starting player in that type of role, get like close to 40 snaps or so a game, which is basically a starter, especially with rotation, and could be a pretty big impact for a team. But it's also totally possible, like you guys said, the flexibility might be an issue. The strength might never get to a point where it's good enough against the run, and he might end up not being able to play the 40-ish snaps plus per game, where then having him at 5 would probably be a little too rich. So definitely, like, I don't think we'll see him that differently, but I just value, I think, what he could be as like a 5 tech at the next level. So
yeah.
So we took care of that. So we all have our 10 up here. So I'll actually jump in at 9, I think, because I think I'm curious if you guys have this guy in your top 10 at all. Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa. I don't know if you were able to see him at all. He's the guy that I love a lot.
He's not in my top 10, but I really do like him.
Okay. Yeah. Felix, is he in your top 10?
Not in my top 10, but I like him a lot. Yeah.
He's just a stout, like 6'2", 320. Like, to me, he's very much in the same vein as like you guys were talking about with who was it? Who was your 10, Jake, again? It was Dorless, right?
Dorless, yeah.
Yeah. Not so much. I thought there was a player we brought up that was that same type of player, but either way, it's like 6'2", 320, powerful, a good pass rusher already. I think he can develop into one a little bit more. Now he's a 6-year player, so there's a little bit of questions about like upside and things like that. But I think he's just all around a very solid player and will be able to do both run and pass defense for you at the next level. Maybe not at a super high level in either one, but he screams like second interior, like especially in like a 4-3 where he's like the second 3 tech in your system, or the guy who plays 3 tech a lot for you. Feels like he could fill that role pretty quickly and actually kind of fill out and continue to get better at the next level. Like, not a flashy player. I don't think he's a good athlete, not an insane one or anything like that. He feels like that the first guy outside of my top 8 where I'm like, this is a defined skill set still, kind of, where he's like not quite good enough at either of them to be a high-end player, but he's going to be a valuable contributor from day one.
Yeah, if I were to jump in really fast, I agree with you. I didn't get to watch enough tape for me to really
Right.
say.
I was on him pretty early, so I watched him earlier this cycle, so that's why I
Yeah,
was already on him a little bit. Yeah.
and I do, from what I saw at least, I like him. I think the upside 6-year player kind of thing is a
Right. I think he kind of is what he is for the most part. Which
yeah,
yeah.
But I see what you're saying. Like that's in my opinion, that's like a perfect fit for what he is. Is that second guy in that
Right.
inside duo for
Yep, for sure.
defensive tackles on a 4-3. Because he plays his tail off, and I love seeing, like, one of my favorite things in scouting is like watching a guy with a high motor, but like seeing a big dude with a high motor is
Yep,
awesome.
it's always fun.
Like,
Yeah, especially like low level competition because he just beat the hell out of everybody because they were just
Yes.
not good enough for him. And that's the key thing with a guy. If he's going to come from Northern Iowa, he better look like he's beating everybody's ass, and he does.
Exactly.
Like that's just what happens. So yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'm right there with you. I mean, somebody with a motor like that, and he's as big as he is, like, I know he's winded and he's working his ass off. So
yeah, for sure.
it's awesome to see. But
anything you wanted to add there, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much hit it on the head. He wasn't in my top 10, but I do think he can be very successful in the NFL.
Yeah,
I
think
he's very he does a lot of things well. He's really quick off the ball.
Good first step.
He doesn't get pushed. He has the high motor you guys talked about. And he's smart too. I mean, he just anticipates things well. He anticipates double teams. I'm really high on him.
So he'll be fun definitely to see where he goes because he was not a combine invite, and I was very upset about that. I think there's a couple guys that could lay claim to this, but I think he was probably my favorite player that didn't get an invite, if I'm not mistaken, unless I'm missing somebody. But he was definitely up there in that list for sure. Let's go to Jake back actually here. Who is your number 9 guy then?
All right. So my number 9, you guys, I'm not sure if you guys will have him in the top 10 or not, but it's Dwayne Carter from Duke.
Yes, I have him as well. I have him. Yeah. You have him too, Felix? Okay. So you have him in 9. Okay. Gotcha. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, he's a great run defender. He's strong. He's quick laterally. I think because of how good he is at run defense, I think he has a high motor. I think he can be a 3-down player in the NFL. I think he could be a little bit more explosive. I don't think his first step is as quick as some of the other guys like Boyd that we were talking about. And his arms could be a little bit longer, but I think he's immediately going to have a role as a run defender because he's so stout in that regard. So because of that, I think his floor is going to be pretty high. But yeah, I like a lot of the things he does. He's really like embodies my ideal defensive lineman. So
yeah.
Okay.
So I want to see Felix. Where do you have him at?
I have him at 7.
I have him also at 7, so we can kind of go back and forth here. I'm going to just say with him, he is the lunch pail defensive tackle. He is the guy you put on the field because there's nothing he isn't going to be good enough at to be out there. He might not be special, like you said, the athleticism, it just isn't quite up there with some of the top guys. And it's hard to be in this class. There's a lot of great athletes at the top. But he's not the super athlete. He's not this guy that's going to be like this absolutely stout run defender, like dominant run defender. But he will be out there and give you quality snaps at 3 tech, especially. You can throw him aside a little bit, I think, at 1, but his size might limit that a little bit depending on your scheme. And you just ask him to eat up snaps, have good reps every time, and then come out for the guy that's probably like a specialist or whatever, right? He is the guy that you put in for the bulk of snaps that you can't afford to have someone out there who can't do one or the other, right? And there's a lot of teams that would really love to have that right now. I know my team even would really love to have that right now, the Steelers, because we kind of have like Benton's kind of that type of guy, but I think he's a better pass rusher. And then Cam's always hurt, and just who else is on the team? I don't even know at this point. Like that type of player is what you need, right? To just kind of settle things down, have a calming presence type of guy in that group. And I think that's why he's probably going to go a little higher than people think because not many people are talking about him. It's Duke, I get it, whatever. Daniel Jones, Felix, sorry. Anyway, every time
we can't avoid it. Can't avoid
every
it.
time. No, I'm just kidding. But no, yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Felix? There.
No, honestly, I think you hit the nail on the head. I really like what Jake said. High floor player. He's a guy that I feel like I'm drafting, I don't know, I say maybe like as high as like the fourth, and I feel like I'm getting a guy that I could probably play right away and provide that, interior depth. Um, what I liked about him the most though was that I think he's like 302 or 305, like
Yeah,
either
somewhere
on that
right above 300. Yeah.
early 300, and he, like, to me at least on tape, he doesn't move like he's 300 pounds. He moves like really well for his size,
Yeah.
especially being like just over 300, a compact kind of guy. And my immediate thought was he would probably be a nice fit in like a 3-4 defense that's got like a real space eating nose,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, but I'm kind of hinting at that. Like I could see him being an end with the Giants, and playing next to
Right.
Dexter Lawrence.
Right. I mean, I think anybody could play like next. I think we could play next to Dexter Lawrence and be all right.
Probably,
Yeah,
yeah.
it wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, but I think he's got that versatility that depending on the alignment you can move him around, and I think
Right.
he's polished enough in both like pass run downs, and I just love that in watching his tape. He pops up. He's always like
Yeah, you notice him.
around
Yeah.
the ball. He's active, and that's something that that heat-seeking missile kind of trait is something that's really good for a player who's like his size and his motor. So yeah,
For sure. I think again, like what Jake said, like if you need a defensive tackle who can just play, and you don't expect him to be great, but you also expect him to be good, this is kind of your guy. Like this is the one you can take and be like, I'm pretty confident he's at least going to be good. Might
yeah,
might never be worth more than, like you said, like a kind of early day 3, late day 2 pick. Might be a guy who only doesn't play a ton of snaps for you every year, but is consistently around. But it's something a lot of teams need, and this is the type of player that
Yeah.
gets drafted and ends up like, oh, who's this guy? Because he's still on the team like 6 years later. And you're like, oh, good for him. It feels like that type of guy.
Perfect depth piece.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, but Felix, who's your number 9 then?
number 9 is Michael Hall Jr.
Ooh, okay, we can have that.
Yeah, Michael Hall Jr. If I had to keep it like very concise, I had him at 9 mainly for the reasons you have Mekhi Wingo at 10. I just think he does it a little bit more consistently, more violently, a lot quicker. But the thing that sticks out to me the most is the scheme versatility, along with the pass rush like prowess that he brings to the table. So I feel like there's no doubt he's going to find a place in the NFL for a team that's going to use him very actively, because he's such a, I think, violent, high motor presence. But I do have the questions about like the consistency and the ability in the run game. But yeah, I had him basically same reasons as like Wingo. Just think he does a little bit better, and because of the pass rush ability, that's why I have him at 9 over Tyler Davis. So.
Yeah, fair enough. I did not have him in my top 10. He was actually 11 because I think him and Wingo are very similar. I just think Wingo has a better quickness and first step. Like I think that trait is what separates him. Not that Hall doesn't also have that trait to a certain degree, but I think that I saw the elite quickness off the snap a little bit more often from Wingo. I think Hall is a better finisher. I think he's more consistent at actually making good on that. But if I'm going for like that type of player, like I like that a little bit extra like skill in terms of if I'm going to split hairs between them, I'll take that elite first step if there's a difference between those two in that first step. So, but again, they're pretty much like in terms of their role, I doubt it's going to be very different. Like I think they're going to be very similar. So it's kind of a pick your poison for me. Like if you took Michael Hall first, like that's cool. He's a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit, more explosive in terms of like short areas, whereas he kind of doesn't have the same ability to finish that Wingo does. I think through the quarterback and the closing speed isn't quite as high, but it's all kind of the same. Like I think the closing speed is an interesting thing too, because I brought it up where like Wingo had less hurries, but more sacks. He finished more plays. I think he had 5 sacks. I think Hall, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, actually I had it pulled up here. I think he had, was it only 2? He had 2 sacks this past year. So like I think it's really just like he got more consistent pressure, but I think Wingo finished his plays a little bit better. So that's part of that, I think, for me too. But Jake, did you have him in your top 10? I don't think we asked about that.
So I have him at 5.
Ooh, okay. So that's kind of the door. Like I have him much higher, and I had Dorless much higher. You have him much higher. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very high on him. I think that I understand like you having Dorless at 5. I think the reason he's higher than Dorless for me is I'm not as worried about him in the run game.
Oh, okay. I can see that. Okay.
Well, I mean, it is a concern. Like, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but I'm a little bit more confident with him. The main reason I have him so high is he has a very active motor. He's quick and he's very strong, and I think that combination is going to make him at least be a consistent disruptive force in the NFL. He is a little bit undersized, as is I feel like most of this class, but he's going to have to make some improvements in the run game. I definitely see those concerns, but I think as a pass rusher, he has a great combo of strength, quickness, gets off the line quick. And I think I think he'll develop into a player who can consistently get pressure up the middle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fair. Like having that high, it's kind of the same thing as like you said for me with Dorless, is like I just trust that he'll be a complete enough player to let his pass rush success shine through. And yeah, if you believe that, there's no reason not to have a guy that can pass rush like he can at times not that high, right? Like he's kind of that's just the name of the game. Like if you can push the pocket or if you can get quick pressure from that spot in the league, not only are you going to be more valuable than even edge can be at times, but you're probably going to get paid a lot once you hit the market. If we notice anything with that recently with the defensive tackle contracts that have come through. So yeah, totally fair. I don't really blame you for that. I think again, it just comes down to how much do you trust them to pull that off, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's just Dorless, and for you, it's Hall. So makes sense there. Okay, that takes care of 10 and 9 for all of us. I know, so I've been keeping track of it this time. So we should all be on number 8. And I don't think any of us have set our number 8 yet, as far as I can tell. So I'll actually go back to Felix here to start us off with number 8. So who do you have 8th here for us?
This one was very interesting for me because I have Carter just above him.
Okay.
But I have Leonard Taylor.
Okay, Leonard Taylor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I say interesting because he flashes so much potential, and he's one of the more frustrating, I think, studies. Because it's like when he's on, he's a early day 2 pick. Like top of the second, like first round's over. Okay, he's at the top of my board. I'm looking at this guy, and when he's off, he looks like one of those guys that's not going to be in the pros, and he's selling insurance instead. Like, it's remarkable. Like, he has such a good frame. He has the athleticism, but he's just so erratic. And I understand that he's a young player, and like he could probably get coached up through a lot of this. Like, a lot of what he lacks, I feel like, is things that can get worked on and refined and focused, and he can blossom into something greater. So I wouldn't blame anybody for having him even like top 5 because his potential is really there. You know, it's
I think coming into the year, a lot of people would have had him up in that range because he had a much better 2022 as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then he has the body type that he has position flexibility. He can move all the way, all along the defensive line. So I just could not get over the inconsistency. I felt like there are times where he shoots the gap and he just like knows what's happening. And then there are times where it's like the ball snaps and he stands up and like literally just gets up high and the opposing lineman's like, okay, it just moves him out the way like it's nothing. And that, frustrates me because I'm like, God, you're like right there. You have so much potential. And then it makes me question. I'm like, okay, how much of it is him not listening to coaching? How much of it is him, maybe being with a coaching staff that's like, oh, he's big and strong. Like, F it. Just put him out there.
Just get back there.
Just like, be active and play hard. But it just seems like he's winging it half the time, and it just feels like if what's it called? Like the crosshairs are like aimed properly, you'll hit it. You know what I mean? He'll hit the mark, but it's just so inconsistent. And I'm just like watching him like, wow, what a play. Wow, what a play. And then the next one, I'm like, wait. And and then he's quiet for like a quarter. And you're like, oh, right. So, I wouldn't blame anybody for having him higher, but I just say like, there's so much that I just don't see on a down-to-down basis.
Yeah, fair enough. Jake, do you have him in your top 10?
Yeah, I have him at 6.
Okay, so you have him at 6. Okay.
Yeah.
You go ahead first, then you can talk about it
Okay.
because I have some stuff to say, but you go ahead.
All right. I mean, Felix, I think you pretty much said it about as well as anyone could. He's inconsistent, but the things he does well are really well. My biggest concern with him was what you mentioned with the pad level. He'll have 2 great plays, and then the third one he'll just get off the ball and stand straight up. And it's one of those things where I don't know if it's like a discipline thing, or it honestly could just be coaching. I mean, this is, the same coaching staff that had that game last year where they didn't take a knee. And I don't know if you
yeah,
guys
that
remember
was
that game.
still the funniest, one of the funniest games I've ever seen.
So it could be coaching. I think he's gonna have to have good coaching and mentorship wherever he goes, because some of his issues, like I think he drops his hands when he's rushing the passer. Sometimes he doesn't finish pass rush moves as strong as he could. These are all things that I think coaching can help. So I hope that he goes to the right situation. But I mean, I'm completely sold on the things he does well. He gets off the ball quick. He's very strong at the point of attack against the run. I didn't really see offensive linemen. They weren't really able to move him around like that. I think he's quick for his size, and when he is able to put it all together on a play, he's going to make things happen. He's going to, cause chaos for the offense, but he's got to be, just more consistent.
So, again, I agree with all of you. He's not in my top 10. And it's honestly more out of spite than it is out of anything else. Because when I watch him play, I'm like, man, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? Like, he'll just, like you said, Felix, he will do something spectacular athletically that you're like, okay, this is a guy, right? And then for like seemingly forever, it's just like he's not even doing anything out here. Like, what's going on? It might as well be me out there. Like, what's happening right now? It's like you can't be this talented and also this just not good sometimes. It doesn't make any sense. And of course, there's tons of players that fall into this category. But he's one that frustrates me because I'm like, man, if you're doing this at the college level, how long is it going to take for you to figure it out at the NFL? Is it going to happen at all? And for me, honestly, the reason I have him outside my top, it's not like just like a spite thing. It's just truly, I don't know if I would take him until like day 3 as a flyer to see if he can make good on the potential. Because there's so many guys that I think are able to do something already well that will bring some sort of value right away. That I don't know if I'm willing to take him over a lot of those guys, especially because some of these guys are also really good athletes, or they at least have a defined pass rushing skill set or whatever it is. And yeah, if you take him late and you develop him and he turns out to be like an all-pro, good for you. Awesome job. It's not going to happen everywhere. So I'd rather let someone else take that chance if we're taking him relatively early. And that's kind of what it comes down to. But again, potential-wise, no problem with you guys ranking him up there. I just don't know if I'd be willing to stomach it as a GM in this situation. So, but
I get that. Yeah. That's a big part of why I had him as low as I did, because I've seen people say he's their top defensive tackle. I've seen people say he's top 5. But my thing is, like, the potential is there, but like the inconsistency concerns me. And what concerns me about the inconsistency is that he will line up over someone, win, and then he will not do what he did to win for the rest of the game. And I'm like, bro, just spam the same move. Like,
make them do something else. I will say in college, especially, like, it's great to have a diverse skill set. Just ask, when we do edges, Latu out of UCLA. Good luck ever figuring out what he's going to do. But like, it's great to be able to do that. But if they can't stop you from doing something, make them stop you from doing, like, make them stop you before you bother. Because why bother changing it up? Like, if you're a bull rusher and you could just pile drive a tackle into the ground every play with your bull rush and you can't do anything about it, just keep doing that. Like, there's just no point. Now, it's a different, obviously, position, but like, again, it just feels like the football IQ might not be there for him right now. And I hate to say that about a guy that I haven't talked to, haven't sat down with, because you don't know this for sure. It could be a coaching thing, it could be something else. But you see so many times you're just like, man, you did the thing. Just do the rest of it. Like, what you know what I mean? It's just like, it does feel like he's years away still, unfortunately, from being a good player.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's almost infuriating. Is
Yeah.
like there's one I have in my head in particular, like one highlight, and I think it was against Clemson. I don't know why I'm blanking on the like. He basically arm unders the guard, swims by, penetrates. He doesn't get the running back, but like the guy like sidestepped him, and you're like, oh, okay, that was nice. Like, I need to see that.
Right.
And then like the rest of the tape, he's just
Nothing.
bull rushing, and
Right.
I'm like, why aren't you? What?
It worked.
Where did the
Do that.
swim go?
Yeah, do
Yeah,
that again. Yeah.
and he just
I don't know.
kept going, and the guy anchors,
Yep, just done. Yeah.
does absolutely nothing, and I'm sitting there like, what?
Yeah, that just feels
And
like
how
a
is he
coaching
gonna
thing to
figure it
me.
out?
Right, and I hope so, Jake. That's my thing. Is like
That's
I'm gonna let someone else take him and figure that out in my situation.
yeah,
Unless if I'm really comfortable with my defensive line coach, I might take him a little bit earlier than like I'm saying. But again, like I have to assume or hope that it is the coaching mostly. Because if it
Yeah.
not mostly coaching, then we might be in for it in terms of him being a contributor.
yeah.
So,
It's like I agree with like
yeah.
beating like just not using the thing that has continued to work for you, especially in the same game. But I don't know. It wouldn't make sense to me for someone to be like this good of a player and not like be like, oh, I just beat this guy doing this, and then just
Right.
not try it again. So
Exactly. And
that's
what's so
kind of why for
frustrating
me
about
it feels.
Jake. Yeah.
And I don't really think Miami has a great coaching staff
No, I wouldn't say
overall.
that for sure. But
So I don't. I
I
don't
just
know.
love that
That's
we're all
just
like, we wonder what it is, and Jake's like, the coaches suck, man.
and like I hope so, Jake. I actually hope so for his sake, and I kind of
Yeah.
think that it's kind
Yeah,
of
honestly, me too. Yeah.
but still, it's like
but
yeah.
I definitely get not being too high on him because the inconsistencies,
Right.
you made a good
So-
point. It's like if you haven't figured it out at this point,
Like
especially with the pad
he
level,
has,
it's
right.
like
He has years
just
to like before
stay-
he really hits his
yeah.
like true peak. Before he would like he has time to figure it out. But again, you have to go somewhere that's willing to let you figure it out.
Mhm.
And it might not, depending on how early someone drafts you, you might not get too many opportunities to show that before you end up getting the boot. So we'll see. I'm hoping for him to work out because if he does, I think it'll be really good for whatever team gets him. But we'll see how early it goes. So I'll finish off number 8 here then. I want to be higher on this player, but again, I just think this is also a skill set guy, a guy who does probably one thing exceptionally well and might not do a whole lot else, and that is Tavondre Sweat out of Texas. He's my number 8. And for what he does, awesome. They don't make him like this guy. Like, holy shit. Like, I still think of the interview he did with Connor Rogers of I shout him all the time with Scout Stock Exchange, NFL Stock Exchange. And he did an interview with him, and he just looks like a freaking like mannequin next to like a small like kid mannequin next to him sitting there. Just doesn't look like another. Like they don't look like they're the same species of people. Like it's insane how much bigger he is. I'm not saying like Connor. I don't think is a huge guy or anything like that, but like he's still a other grown human being, and he doesn't look like it next to this guy. It's insane. And I know NFL players crazy size. This guy's bigger than other NFL players. It's just crazy to look at him. And he's a good athlete for his size, of course. Didn't quite burn the track up like he kind of sound like he thought he was going to. But the point is, a good athlete at this size, really hard to find. But even so, I just don't know if he's ever going to have enough of a pass rush skill set at that size. If he's going to play at 360, which is what he measured in at, and that was lower than I think some people thought he was going to measure in at based on what his playing weight probably was. I just feel like he's that. You sit him in the middle of the field, and he's just going to stay there, and no one's going to get through him, around him, or anything else. He's just going to have to be there, and you're going to have to deal with it. And honestly, that's awesome. It's really important for a lot of defensive schemes to have that guy you can just stick there and be like, no, you will not go here. Forget it. Go somewhere else. And like that's why you're going to take him probably in the middle of day 2. I would guess is his range, somewhere around there. You take him, you plop him in the middle of your defense and say, good, cool. We don't have to worry about that for a while. How valuable is that compared to some of the other guys? That's the question. Like even a Dwayne Carter, like, do I think he has that niche that's what has? No, but I think he can play more snaps than him, and I think he can give you more different things, right? So I think Carter probably to me is a little bit of a higher overall player, but Sweat's probably going to be drafted higher, and I understand why that's probably going to happen, right? Like there's a reason why you draft this guy for his skill set. So that's kind of my spiel on him. I'm assuming, I would guess that you guys have him in your top 10. Where do you have him, Jake? I'll go to you first here.
So I have him at 7.
7. Okay. So right around the same range for me. Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, you know, I was doing some research on him and I saw somebody just say rare size.
Yeah. It's rare. It's literally
describes it perfectly. Because I mean, you just don't see people that big. And one thing that I think goes with that really well is I think he's really quick with his first step off the ball.
Yes, he has good like his athleticism
Yeah.
is not a problem by any means. It's just I think that I'm sure you're going to agree with me. Like the size just prohibits some of the pass rush ability.
Yeah, it's just it does. But he's very strong, and he causes chaos pretty consistently.
Yes.
My biggest worry with him and why he's not higher is just how long he's going to be able to like play throughout a full NFL season.
Yes.
Just with his size, I think conditioning will be important. My only worry is him being able to play, like if he's a starter, being able to play starter level like 40 snaps a game throughout the full season. If he can do that, which I think he will be able to, if he can do that, I don't see any reason why he should, as long as he stays healthy, why he shouldn't develop into his full potential. But yeah, I really like him.
Yeah, like I said, I really do too. I'm just curious, like how early he'll get drafted. Felix, where did you have him at?
I actually like him too. I have him at 6.
6. Okay.
Yeah. I think, you know, the rare size, obviously. But what strikes me about him is that he is one of those dudes that you see who is just massive for no damn reason, and then like what gets me though is of all the, I'm trying to think back to like other players. Obviously, he's rare in terms of size, but I'm trying to think back to other players in the last few years who are big, who are considered the biggest, who are huge guys, and play with the motor he plays with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he is on all the time.
Yeah. When he's out there, he's out there.
And like I love that he makes plays and he celebrates and he's like always like he is disruptive. Like Jake said, he causes chaos a lot because it's like he's such a concern. And there are times where like maybe he gets double teamed and you see it like he gets double teamed and then one of his teammates, who's probably going to be in our top 10, ends up making the play on the run.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because he's eating up so much attention. But then you'll see plays where it's like the offense goes, okay, wait a second. Like, we got to watch the other guy now because he's hot. And then they single up Sweat, and Sweat's like, excuse me, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And like, the only reason why he may not have like the splash play and the sacks and everything is because of his size and he's not that quick. But he's just demolishing blocks at times. And to me, again, I'm going to show my like slight bias as a Giants fan. Like, I just think of like Dexter Lawrence and how massive of a guy he is, how big of a person he was coming out, and how a lot of people said he's not going to have like the motor, he's not going to have the fitness and all that. And he ended up playing like 78% of the snaps all year and has become like a solid interior pass rusher. So it's like, I see that with Sweat in terms of like the active hands, the motor, the attitude, like even at the end of the game, he's sitting there like getting hyped and celebrating and trying to make plays. And that's where I'm like, I understand the concern about like the size and is he going to last like a season? But I feel like if he ends up on a team where there's like a nice little rotation of interior guys and he's able to take breaks here and there, like he's going to be a dude that is going to be a force because in the fourth quarter, he's going to be fresh. You know?
Yeah.
But I could see him being a dude who gets picked up like middle, maybe early day 2 for a team that was horrible against the run last year.
Right.
Like, I think like Cardinals, Broncos, like I think they were at like the bottom of like rushing.
I would like him on the Chargers just so we could stop talking about the Chargers being bad at run defense for the first time in like a decade.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Plus, this feels like a John Harbaugh thing. Jim Harbaugh. Whichever Harbaugh it is.
That's a big man. Let's go get him. He's gonna be like second round.
Second round, got him.
Yeah. Got him.
No, yeah. The last thing I'll say about Sweat before we move on, which we're actually going to go to my number 6 because we've covered all of our 7s and you guys' number 6s. But Sweat to me, like if he works out, and I think he's like as far as pass rushing goes, like he had a good season this past year, really did. But he's like a pocket pusher. Like I don't think he's going to like actually like chase down quarterbacks a ton. He's not going to get in their face a ton. I think it's just he's going to affect the middle of the pocket. And that could allow, like you said, like his teammate took advantage of it this year, and other guys probably will too. Gaps will form because guys are just trying to keep him from annihilating the play in the first 2 seconds of it, right?
Yeah.
And that can help free up other guys. So his value on passing downs is higher than some other, I think, nose tackle types because of that.
Yeah.
But again, Dexter Lawrence also, I will say, is maybe the best pass rusher at nose tackle ever already. Like that's possible. I would say he probably is. So like that's a tough comparison, but yeah, it's like, but still, it's the idea behind it is the same. Like he could bring some value on third down. You know, I'd like to see him play at least 30 snaps a game to be worth getting taken in the mid rounds. We'll see if he can do that. He did it in college level, but obviously it's a little bit different. You know, we'll see how things go at the NFL, but we'll see what he does. But you know, I'll go to my number 6 to finish off the bottom half of our top 10 here. I wonder, I'm assuming you guys have him in your top 10 just higher than me. I just have some issues with him. Like the combine obviously set things off for him a little bit. The tape is definitely good at times, but Braden Fisk is my number 6 out of FSU. At the bottom line, he's an elite athlete. You do see it on film at times. I think the testing is still like a little bit more than I would have guessed just watching him, but the explosiveness is definitely there, the flexibility. I just don't think he has much power to his game. And I think playing interior in the NFL, if you don't have some power element, it's really hard to be on the field all the time. It just is. And I wonder if he's going to end up being pigeonholed as kind of a pass rush specialist type. And if he is, I think he's going to be one of the best at doing that. It's just, is he going to be the value that I think people are expecting with his testing and where his stock is definitely kind of climbing, at least among media? Is he going to reach a point where his value is no longer good if you take him where he might get taken, right? And to me, he's definitely a firm like middle of day 2 player because I do wonder about the power profile. If he can add a little bit of strength and like he's the problem with him ultimately is he's bigger but also like taller but not heavier, so he has that lack of power frame already. And I don't know how much he can add to it at this point, right? Like I don't know if he can get up over 300 and play with the same explosiveness. And I don't think you want to take away from that either. So he might end up kind of in that, like I said, that mold where you have to just play him as kind of that mostly pass rushing specialist type. So where do you guys have him at?
I have him at 3.
Okay, so you have him at 3. That's kind of what I thought you guys might be closer to. So
yeah, I actually had him at 5. Just to jump.
Okay, you have him at 5. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
No, you're good. I could talk about the things he does well for a while.
Right.
He's explosive, high motor. He's very athletic. I understand. I get the concerns about his power. For me, I think it stems from his pad level. I noticed a lot of times he kind of keeps his pads high. In the run game, that allows offensive linemen to push him out of the way and create the hole. Yeah. And in the passing game, his hands kind of get locked up because of it. But I think if he can fix that, then that he still doesn't have as much power as you might want from the position. Yeah. But I think if he can fix his pad level, which can be coached, I think that can help some of those issues. So I get that concern for sure. But that's kind of why I had him at 3, because I think that if that can be fixed, then it can start to heal up some of the other concerns with him. And there's a ton of things that I think he does really well.
Yes.
Especially as a pass rusher. So that's kind of why I have him at 3.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Felix?
Yeah. I'd say from 5 to 3, the guys are pretty close for me, at least.
Yeah.
So having him at 5, or having him at 3 is like not a surprise for me at all. I just I don't know. As I watch his film, I think, oddly enough, I think finesse every time I watch his film. I just see a guy who is a pass rush specialist who moves really well. And that was something that, like, the combine, I was like, hey, look at the way he moves. This is nice. But then at the same time, I just felt like watching the tape, it's like there's uh, a sense of power that's not there, considering his size. It's like he doesn't follow through on, like, his lower half. So, like, even if he's able to keep that low pad level, he's able to knife through. If he, even if he has pretty good leverage, he gets kind of slowed up, and it's like he can't drive through that momentum. You know what I mean?
He can't convert speed to power.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's something that is something you hear more from the edge group about the ability to do that, which is definitely a big thing if you want to be considered like a top tier edge, is to being able to do that, or at least show the potential to do that. But it's in the interior too. Like, if you have all that explosiveness, if it gets stunted the second you get contacted against a stronger guy, it's just going to be times where you're just not a factor. And I think if you're not going to be a factor a significant amount of time, unless you can fix those things, like I said, if Jake, what Jake said, if he can get those things coached up, he's never going to be a powerful player. But if he can be strong enough of a one and play with good leverage enough where it's not a glaring issue as often as it was for me, then I think taking him top of the second round, which is probably closer to where he's going to be taken in the draft, totally reasonable. Probably makes a ton of sense, right? For me, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to play the run at a high enough level to get on the field for a significant amount of snaps. And obviously, there's a ton of teams that do rotations, so maybe a team taking him doesn't care about that, right? Maybe there's like, I don't care if you could do that. We're going to use it for something else anyway. But if that's the case, like, I'd rather take a swing on a value player down the board who could also do stuff like that. Maybe not quite as well. Maybe you don't have the same, like, the size and the length and everything, but at least you have that same type of skill set. You don't have to pay as much for it, right? So that's kind of why he's at 6. Again, if you told me you had him as your third, like you said, Jake, I'm not surprised by that, because if he works out, he's probably going to really work out with his frame and his skill set. It's just, again, if we're playing the averages here, I'm going to trust that the guys above him that I think have more power or have a more defined skill set that I can trust, I'll just take that chance, basically, is what it comes down to, because it's all chances.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like this. But yeah, so I'm glad. I'm interested. I shouldn't say. I'm glad that we have a lot of different opinions here, because it's been interesting about, especially some of the guys that are like the pass rushy types, where it's like, how much do you believe they can do anything else? Like, that's kind of the question, right? Like, it depends. But that should take us through actually all of our top 10 through 6 and 5 should all be done. So I just want to make sure. So, you guys, for 5, I have Brandon Dorless. You had what, Jake, again?
Hall,
and then Felix, who was your 5 again?
5, I had Fisk.
Fisk, right? So that was your 5th. That was Fisk. So I had Fisk at 6, Carter at 7, Sweat at 8, Boyd at 9, and Wingo at 10. Did you guys miss any of your 5s? What? Good.
I just realized I didn't talk about my number 8.
Oh, who was your number 8? I thought I got you there.
Rook or
Ororo? Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, say that one 5 times. Jesus Christ. Rook Ororo. Yeah. So, okay, so that was your number 8. Do you have him in your top 10, Felix?
I do.
Okay. Okay. You go ahead first, Jake, because I think me and him are a little higher on him, possibly.
Yeah. I didn't watch as much of him as some of the other guys I had. That might be part of the reason he's not as high. But I really do love his game. I think he only started playing football like his junior year of high school.
Something like that.
Or something like that. So the amount of progress he's made is pretty insane. And I think all of his weaknesses are coachable. And they're just things that I think are a result of starting, playing football much later than probably most, if not all, of the guys in the entire class. But my concerns with him are his hand, his hand fighting after the initial first punch, because he's good at like the point of attack, but he doesn't really have any counters that I saw. I think his pad level is a little inconsistent. Same with his technique. But again, I think those are all things that you can chalk up to, he's only played football for like maybe 6-7 years, which is way less than most of the people in this class. I think he's going to be really, really good in the NFL, but those are 3 issues that make me, like, as a pass rusher, those are probably your 3 most important things, I think.
Yeah.
So for those to be things that I'm concerned about with him, that's why he's down at 8. But I do think, I mean, his potential to me is sky high. He's shown flashes of being an excellent pass rusher, and I
Mhm.
think you can use him in a lot of different ways. So I think, he's already put this much together playing football so much less than some of these other players. I think he will grow into a great NFL player, but just because of those issues, I do have him at 8. But I definitely understand why
Right.
you guys have him higher.
So where do you have him at, Felix, real quick?
I have him at 3.
You have a 3. I have him at 4. Okay. So, all right. So I'll since I'm a little bit lower, I'll let you get the second crack at it, or I guess third crack in this case, Felix, to talk about him. But, um, so he's a multiple ball of clay who can play, I think, all across the line. And there's something about that I like. I know in my head, it's like, oh, but what if he ends up being nothing instead of one of these things that you think he'd be? Yeah, but that's no fun. Like you got you got to trust your coaches, right? Granted, I did just talk about how other guys like maybe they might not be good because they also need coaches. That's beside the point. No shit. I think he has a really nice floor though because I think he's already a really good run defender. I think that
Yeah.
he has really good size and strength for the position. I think he can play along the defensive line really anywhere, at least in spurts. I don't think he's obviously big enough to be like a 0 tech or a 1 tech a lot, but he's a really sound run defender. I think he can at least hold his own there. Probably not take on double teams or anything consistently, but I like that floor. And I think the athleticism that he does have makes me believe that the pass rush skill set will come along as you let him kind of develop it. And again, do I know that for sure? No. And that's why it's a little bit of a concern for me. But there's just something about a guy that has his type of frame that I love because I'm just like, I could just stick you and just put you here and do whatever you need to do. And like, I know I'm getting a good run defender. I know you can eat up a lot of snaps because I think he's got really good stamina. It's just how much do you trust your guys to coach him up and get him to the point where he is an impact pass rusher? Because you see flashes of it. Like you said, Jake, I think he's still raw a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's just part of, coming from, I think he's from Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So like it takes time to learn that type of stuff. It really does. Like you're not always going to be able to pick that stuff up. And I think he has all the tools required to learn it, which is important for this exercise.
Yeah.
Right? You have to trust that in your coaching staff. But for the same reason why you have him lower, Jake, and I have other players lower, is the same reason why I also have him higher, because there's that chance. Like it's just fun, right? To think about like what could this guy become, and do you want to be the team to take that chance? In my opinion, I'd be the one that want to take that chance. So granted, I need a player like this on my team, so maybe I'm a little bit biased there, but that's beside the point. I think he's a fun player, so I'm definitely curious. So I know you had him at 3, Felix. So do you feel kind of the same way, or anything you want to add there?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is I think last week talking about offensive linemen, I was talking about how like if they're a wrestler, I'm immediately like, oh yeah, I'm in. With it's kind of similar for defensive linemen, but especially pass rushers or like interior guys who have pass rush ability. When they're like, hey, he's only played this many years, I'm like, yes.
He has time to figure it out. Yeah.
What could he become?
That's it right there.
what really like hits me is that he's violent. He is a high motor. He doesn't quit on the play. He's very, very physical. In both phases, run and pass. And I feel like a lot of what I denoted as I'm watching him play that he might struggle with is not an every down thing.
Yes.
And it's more inconsistency,
Yeah.
whether it's pad level, hand placement, having like a variety of pass rush moves outside of maybe his bull rush and converting the speed to power.
Right.
Like it's stuff that is teachable, and I feel like the other thing that really stuck out to me was that he has like a really good first step. There's the position versatility. I feel like he's a guy that you're not going to have to take off the field unless he's tired.
Yeah, I think you could bump him from like you start him at 3 on early downs, and especially, or actually, I really like him as like a 4-eye or 5 and run downs because he helps protect your edge a little bit. You slide him inside as a 3 for pass rush downs. You can give him a breather, and then you can put him in even for like a tough run defense snap on the inside, like on the goal line. I think it'd be fun for him. Like you can kind of put him all over the place, and it helps get him on the field more too. It's easier to get this type of player snaps early, when he's able to one, be a good run defender, which is really important, even with the pass game the way it is. And you know that you can trust him to go out there and make plays in the run game. As a pass rusher, there's always guys that might not be able to do it, but they still get snaps because of other things they can do. You at least will have that with him while you try to develop the skill set as a pass rusher.
Yeah. And that's what I absolutely agree with everything you said. And I just like, I don't know, he sticks out to me. Again, he's like he strikes me similarly like Sweat in terms of like he's just on tape every time, or like Carter pops off every time.
He does. He definitely pops
where
up.
he is. He pops up all the time, and it's just consistent disruption, chaos. And I feel like the sky's the limit. Like he's the first guy on my list that I look at, and I'm like, okay, yeah, like every down I can keep him out there. I don't have to take him out, you know. Whereas you have guys like Fisk, who we just talked about, who I have at 5, and he has like an ideal frame, but then I wonder about how he is in the run game.
Right, the strength and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like Ruocco, like you put him out there, and until he goes like that because he's tired, you don't have to worry.
With it. Yeah, I'm good with it.
Yeah, you can play wherever.
Yeah, that's definitely where I'm at with him too. So let's move to, I know that, so he was my 4, so I'm good there. Let's move to, we'll go to Felix. Who's your number 4 guy then?
Number 4 for me is Chris Jenkins.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, really like Chris Jenkins' tape. Of course, you know, a little bit of a bias too, because another thing is the pedigree. You know, coming from a football dad who was a beast. Honestly,
just a little bit, huh?
Yeah, he was a really good defensive lineman. You know, and Jenkins I just like because he's very, like, I know something that's popped up. I've seen it on Twitter, stuff like that. Is that he's so strong, and he's powerful, blah, blah, blah. But like it really translates on film. You know, as much as, and I don't mean to like shit on Fisk so much, but it's like as much as like
Jake's like, man, you got
no, I mean, like
very gorgeous to me.
Very gorgeous. That's funny. So, like, as much as he's a guy that has like the body and the frame, I wonder about the power. And I look at like Chris Jenkins, and I'm like, people talk about his power, and then you put the tape on, and it's like, oh my god, yes, okay, like. You know, there's so many times where I'm watching the film, and I do this thing where I watch film and like I watch it and I do like commentary to myself, like I'm talking to myself.
I actually like that. That helps a lot.
Yeah, and it's really funny because my wife would be like, "Who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "Shh, leave me alone."
And then like, you hear, "Holy shit!" What the?
Yeah, and there's so many times like the thing I kept noting was watching him on film. I'm like, "Yo, chill, relax." Like he's just so he looks like. The power's there, and he plays so angry. It's just like it's like he goes into it like the water boy. He pictures like another face on everyone, and he's just like they're all dead to me.
It's probably just the Patriots offensive line because his dad probably talks shit about them all the time. Like the mid 2000s Patriots offensive line. Just like you just sees Tom Brady back there, like, oh, that son of a bitch.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing is like he's so strong. He's got like. A good amount of pass rush moves, you know, good in terms of understanding leverage and how to, like we talked about with Taylor, like he understands strategically how he's going to approach the guy that's in front of him, and he's not playing really like the same from game to game, just depending on the guy that he's lined up on, you know. And I will say he was a guy that was close for me to be 3, maybe even 2. I just think that the guys that I have above him just have higher ceilings for the most part. But I feel like Jenkins is a guy that if a team drafts him in like the 2nd round, I wouldn't be surprised because as much as he might lack as like a pass rusher, because I think he's definitely a better run defender than a pass rusher, I think there is a lot of like motor, violence, hand usage that's there that would allow him to stay on the field on like passing downs, maybe as like the thickest guy on the line at that point, you know what I mean? And maybe he like reduces inside a little bit, but I think he's a guy that, you know, just the power is there. Even if he's laid off the snap, he's not like the most explosive right off the snap, but it's just so strong. It's like he has such good core strength that once he gets moving, offensive linemen have to find some sort of way to regain leverage and anchor. And even if they succeed and stop him, you can tell that they're like uncomfortable.
Yep.
So that chaos is made. You know what I mean? So I think he's a guy that when you're lining up your offense, you do have to like consider where he's at, and he can really disrupt the play if you just take for granted what he's doing or what his his role is there. So having him at 4, just a shade under or Horhoro, if I said it right.
Ororo, I believe is how you say it. Ororo, I think.
So just
Again,
a shade under.
5 times fast, you might just like, I don't know, you probably lose your whole freaking skull. You're just like, what the hell is happening right now?
Right.
No,
But, yeah, I have him at 4. I like him a lot. Him and Aurora Rowe are 2 of the guys that I look at that I'm like they're my guys. You know what I mean? I would pound the table for either of them. But I like Jenkins a
lot. Gotcha. Jake, did you say your 4 already? I don't think so.
He's my 4.
Oh, he's your 4 too. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's funny. So you guys have him at 4. I have him at 3, as I already had Rook at 4. I'll let you go next to Jake because you have him in the same spot.
Okay. Yeah, I think Felix pretty much hit the nail on the head. It was real tough for me to decide between him or Fisk for number 3.
Talk about different players, like we said a minute ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
obviously the power that you're concerned about with Fisk is not a concern with Jenkins. No. The reason he's lower is because I do think with Fisk that can be helped out with coaching a bit.
Yeah.
And with Jenkins, he's very good as a pass rusher at the point of attack. I'm a little bit worried about after that initial punch having hand moves after that, and I'm much more confident with Fisk in that regard. So that's why I have him above Jenkins.
Yeah,
but they're like right there. But yeah.
I'll say with Jenkins, he is one of my favorite. He's like I said, number 3. He's one of my favorite players in this class simply because he just has the most immense amount of FU energy I've ever seen. Like he's truly he's out there trying to tell every single guy he goes against, like, you just simply aren't strong enough for me. Like, get in the weight room, try next year, basically is what it was every time it felt like with him. And there's something about that interior line that I can't ignore. Like when you were just that physically powerful, like I think if he's not the same type of player as Cam, but again, going back to my Steelers, Cam Hayward, just a freakishly strong human being that should not be allowed to do that to people. Like some of the stuff that he's done to people in his career just shouldn't be allowed to happen. Like centers, forget about it. Most guards, unless you're like a 330 pounder with crazy strength, forget about it. Like it's just not going to happen one-on-one. And for a guy that isn't like huge, like he's 305, I think is what he was listed at. And I don't know if he weighed in differently at the combine. I have to double check. Like, he's not like 320 pounds. He's not like this freaky, like, he's just 305 pounds of pure, just like, too bad. I'm stronger than you. It doesn't matter how big you are. And I think as a pass rusher, he's good enough to play on third down, especially if you're basically just like, hey, go head up on the center and run through his face. Like, I think you can kind of ask him to do that a lot, and he'll be pretty good at that against especially smaller centers nowadays. Now, double teams as a passer, like he doesn't have the moves. He doesn't have like all that stuff to probably make a huge impact there, but it's not such an issue. And his hurries were better this year. Like he had more pressures on less pass rush snaps. Like he's clearly getting better at it. And I think his natural strength is going to give him an advantage over certain guys where they just might not be able to hang with him as a bull rusher, especially. So we'll see if he can develop more of a pass rushing skill set. But even if he doesn't, this is a guy you just kind of, like you said, Felix, you kind of just stick him in the middle all the time, whether it's 3 or 1 preferably, and just let him manhandle dudes in the run game, especially. So
yeah,
hard to not have that. Yeah,
I wanted to add one of the notes I had on my report for him was, like you said, the FU energy. I wrote real Goku energy.
There it is. Love
so
it.
Strong, and it's literally like, who is my opponent today?
Right.
And
who is
he's like, you're not strong enough.
Yep,
and like,
bad.
Literally, that's him. Like every game, he's just like, oh, this pathetic human.
Yeah, this is what I have to deal with. All right, cool.
Yeah, like
no problems today.
He's strong for no reason. It's just like, stop, dude. Like
we're eating tonight, boys. Like, it's funny. Yeah, he was great. But so I think that leaves us as far as number 3 goes with just yours, Felix. I think we talked. Like, I know Jake had Fisk. I had Jenkins. Who's your number 3, Felix?
Oh, I had Aurora.
Oh, that's right. He was number 3. I thought he was number 4 for
Yeah.
you. All right, so we'll get okay. We're down to our last 2 then here, guys.
Yeah.
And it's really about the order, right? I assume it's not so much about who they are. I mean, if you guys pull out someone else for 2 and 1, good for you. I either haven't watched them or you're being a little crazy to me. But it's really the order that you have these guys in. So let's just talk about it. Who is our number 2? Felix, start with you.
Damn, you gotta start with me. Number
Yeah.
2 is number 2 is Byron Murphy.
Okay. Jake, who's your number 2?
Johnny Newton.
Okay. So Felix and I are on the Johnny Newton train. Jacob is on the Byron Murphy train. So I'll let you go first then. Jake actually will rebut with why we have him at 2, and then we'll go to Newton actually. So why do you have him here at number 1 with Murphy? We'll let you talk about him first.
Murphy first?
Yes. Yeah, because you have him number 1, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay. You go with Murphy first then.
Yeah, this is another one of those. I'd be happy to have either of these guys, and it's real tough for me. But with Murphy,
What's up, Luke? Sorry, Jake, real quick. What's up, Luke?
Oh, what's up, Luke?
Hi, Luke.
Nice
Long
to see
time
you.
no see.
Get back to recruiting. I see you recruiting on Twitter.
Yeah, right.
No, it's nice to see you. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
Yeah. He's so quick with his first step. He plays with a high motor, and I think that's. I mean, most top talents play with a high motor, but he plays every rep the same amount of energy, and his pad leverage I'm never worried about like I am with so many other people.
Yep, no, he's low to the ground for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real tough for me here. I went with Murphy over Newton just because I'm a little bit worried about Newton being a little bit undersized, and I think Murphy's quicker off the snap. So I guess that would be my reasoning for having him number 1. But
okay,
yeah, I think it's a win-win here with either of these 2.
Yeah, so with Murphy, he is more physically gifted, I think, in terms of just overall. His size profile it's weird a little bit because I think is he just under 6'1", I think is what he was listed at the combine.
Yeah, I think he's 6 foot.
Yeah, but
like 6 foot and a half or something.
But like over 300 pounds. So he's kind of a weird body type, but he takes advantage of it in all the best ways. Like the leverage is good, like you said, Jake. There's no questions about his pad level. He has explosiveness. Like his first step is going to be really, really impressive at the NFL level right away. There's really nothing about his game that I'm like, okay, I'm worried about it. Like his in run defense, obviously being that size, but the leverage helps him. So he's not going to be a bad run defender by any means. I do wonder if he'll be quite as good of one at the next level as he was in college, especially if he doesn't play next to somebody like Sweat. There's an element of that to it. But Newton's kind of like, he's not this elite run defender in my opinion either. So it's not like a huge separating factor between them. I don't know if Felix is going to agree with me as far as why I have Newton ahead of him, but for me, it's mostly the fact that Newton, I think, is a pure technician as a pass rusher with more than enough athleticism to kind of not have that gap in athleticism be an issue for me. If I needed somebody to pass rush right now in this class, like if I needed somebody to go on NFL Field tomorrow and say, like, I need you to win your matchups as a pass rusher, the only person that I would have ahead of Johnny Newton is Leatu Latu as an edge, the only other player. Because those two, to me, are the textbook definition of like there's pass rush ability and then there's pass rush skill set plan, like execution. Those two have both, in my opinion, but especially the execution part, locked down. Like there's nothing you can throw at them where they're not going to be like, oh, let me just do this instead, or I'm going to set you up here. Or like, there's one thing I actually saw earlier today. I was watching some bootleg football podcast. I'm sure you guys have seen it with like Brett Coleman and EJ Snyder, those guys. They're talking about their defensive gems, and I didn't watch the whole episode, but they were talking about Johnny Newton, and they noted something that I also noticed a couple of times on this film, where there's times where he just grabs the offensive lineman's hands, like catches their hands, and just says basically like, "Too bad, you messed up," and the rep is over, and just sheds them. And it's so funny because it's just basically like he's stealing their lunch money. Like, nope, and then the rep's over, they lose. And I don't think he's going to do that often at the NFL level, obviously, because guys have better hand usage, all this stuff. But it's just comical to watch another another football player have just his hands taken away from him essentially and tossed aside, and it's just already over. And he just knows so much about he knows exactly what he needs to do on every rep as a pass rusher. And I think that's why initially, at least, and this is why like Murphy might end up being the higher upside player, might end up kind of overtaking him eventually. But I'm really confident that day one, Newton's going to be the best player from this interior group. And then it might continue on into the future. That's kind of why I'm sticking with him at 1, despite Murphy kind of climbing up through this process. But
yeah.
Anything you want to add there, Felix?
No, I really liked your point about why you had him ahead in terms of like the polish as a pass rusher.
Yeah.
That's something that really sticks out to me. Like I had mentioned earlier, again, like talking about Taylor, just understanding not just like the pass rush plan, but understanding like what is my opposition not doing well, and I'm just going to use the hell out of that.
Exactly.
And if the guy gets hip to it and starts to play well because he's counteracting what I'm doing, then guess what?
Cool. Just back to the other. Yeah, back to something else.
Yeah. And so, like to me, Johnny Newton is. I think they're interesting players because they are very different from each other, at least in my opinion. But like they both present very promising futures, and like Jake said, I'd be happy with either of them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I feel like Byron Murphy is the superior athlete that is going to be winning and or dominating if he ends up becoming a great player. And it's a lot of it is going to be that athleticism, that quick first step, that understanding leverage in the low center of gravity. I feel like Newton wins because of just the refinement and the polish. And I feel like between the two of them, why I had Newton ahead is they're very similar in terms of grades, but I would want Newton because I feel like Newton is the guy that I would pick. He'd play well. I'd sign him to a second contract. He'd play well. I'd think about signing him to another contract. Maybe he'd continue playing well because, like, I could see him being 33 years old and still playing
still,
because he understands how to take on an opponent and down to down. Like, all right, so they like doing this. I'm gonna hit him with this. Oh, okay, so he knows how to handle that. Well, I'm gonna hit him with this. And what also stuck out to me is another thing that kind of edges him out, and you touched on it. Murphy had Devondre Sweat next to him for a lot of the game, and a lot of that takes so much pressure off of what you need to do, because like I had mentioned earlier when talking about Sweat, you're gonna double team Sweat's big ass, and then Murphy's
what else are you gonna do besides do that?
Yeah, and Murphy's so fast and athletic that he's gonna abuse the hell out of that. And then if you're like, wait, we got to watch out for Murphy. Now you got to worry about this gigantic human being just like eating your guard. And it's just pick your poison at that point. Whereas Johnny Newton, I can't name anyone else on the defensive line. Maybe that makes me a poor scout because I'm not looking ahead. But
yeah,
Johnny Newton, it's the fighting Johnny Newtons. It's not
literally.
a line.
And the sad thing is, Felix, is last year when they had all those NFL players, guess who popped on film about as much as any of them did? Johnny Newton last year.
Yes.
I remember watching like Devin Witherspoon because I wanted to watch him because I was thinking that he might be one of the first corners, and he was the first corner. And I'm like, okay, this guy's awesome. And but every so often I'd be like, man, the quarterback is not really doing so good. Like he's kind of having trouble targeting anybody. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting.
He doesn't have time for some reason.
Yeah, it's like I watch back. I'm like, oh, there's this dude in the middle of the field who's undressing guards on every snap. It's like, okay, well, that explains a lot. Like, how are you going to throw in this team when they have 4 NFL defensive backs and also a guy who can keep you from throwing the ball after like 2 seconds? Like, it's not great. It's not awesome. You know, it's kind of tough to play against that.
That's a really good point too. Yeah. And I really like, another thing just to add on to it, I think they both are high motor players, but there are times where I'm seeing Newton, like, the play gets away from him, like they run to the other side or something, and he'll kind of chase it down. And then there are times where maybe he takes it a little light, but
Yeah, I mean, if I was on this version of Illinois' team, because at least last year you played with a bunch of NFL players, like you kind of had to keep up. I try not to worry about that as much with like the higher profile prospects because they know what's at stake, right? Like they know when they get in the league, like they need that second contract, right?
Yeah.
So you're at least getting max effort for those first 4 years. And after that, maybe then you have to start having conversations. But
Yeah.
no, I think the bottom line is like if you take either one of these guys first, I'm not going to be like, oh my god, I can't believe you took Byron Murphy. It's like, yeah, good for you, man. Congrats. Like you took a freak at defensive tackle. It's just, I think one way to put it too is I think when Murphy wins, he wins faster. And I think that Newton wins more consistently, right? Like that's just kind of the end game. And a lot of that too is like, obviously you want guys to win fast. And it's not even that Newton doesn't win fast and can get to the quarterback fast, but Murphy just has more juice, right? Just kind of what it comes down to. And some teams are going to value that enough where like, even though I think that there's a decent-ish gap in their pass rush profile in terms of how good each guy is at handling different things, maybe that extra juice is enough to separate them, right? Like that might be what you look for. So honestly, you can't really go wrong in my opinion with those two top guys. A lot of these guys, honestly, I think are going to have good careers, and they always do. Like interior defensive players tend to, at least for me, like especially if you have one thing you can do well, you stick around for a while and you kind of get. I mean, how many teams has Quentin Jefferson played for? I don't think of. Like feels like he's played for like 8 teams. He probably hasn't played for that many teams. But someone always wants to sign him for like $1 million, and he gets like 30 pressures and like 40% of the snaps. You're like, awesome, great. Pick another team next year to go do that for. It's really weird. Like guys like that, they just kind of stick around for a while. But last thing I wanted to mention before we kind of close the show up here, I think we spent enough time with that. I don't think we need to add anything else to the show. We're already like an hour and a half in. I think the funniest landing spot possible for all of these guys, and I think you guys are going to immediately agree with me as soon as I say this, T'Vondre Sweat to the Eagles would be so funny. You have freaking Jordan Davis, who's just 20 pounds lighter and with a freaking rocket ship strapped to his back version of T'Vondre Sweat, and then Jalen Carter is your top 3 interior players. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, name a funnier possible interior defensive line group that could happen next year. I can't name one. Maybe him and Dexter Lawrence playing together would be hilarious too. Like, which one's a nose tackle? Who gives a shit? I don't know. Pick one.
They're both going to get in there.
Right. It's like, imagine him, like those two, like one's a 1 and one's a 3 on a snap. Like, what do you do?
I low-key have thought about that so often. I've been like, yo, if they draft Sweat, that would be
Wouldn't it be objectively hilarious? Like,
yeah.
Because you go into the defensive meeting, it's like, all right, who are we playing this week? Giants? Dexter Lawrence. That sucks. Wait, who they draft in like the 3rd round this year? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
All right. Can we play 6 guards on this week? Like,
right? Yeah.
Is there can we possibly do that? Can we play like 8 offensive linemen?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
They're just like, we're just gonna run off tackle all game.
Like, yeah, it's like literally you're gonna have it's gonna be outside runs and bootlegs every single snap. It's because like, and running the ball just might not happen. Let's just not.
Yeah.
Like
nothing but like design pitches.
It's right. It's just so because like think about
wide receiver screens.
If you double team both of them, right? Kayvon Thibodeau is not the most developed pass rusher yet, but he would be able to win 1-on-1s. Oh, and they just traded for Brian Burns, by the way. What are you gonna do with him?
I forgot about that.
What's the plan for that situation?
Yeah,
talk about 7-man protection every fucking snap. Be so funny.
Beef up the middle,
right?
You can't run on us, and then
the best part, Felix. I hate to say this to you, I really do. I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna roll out the scariest front 4 in NFL history somehow, and it won't mean anything because Daniel Jones is going to start 12 games as a quarterback, and Drew Lock's going to start 5, and you guys are going to go 7-10 because they're playing quarterback, and your defensive line is going to kill them both. They're going to take them out back after the season because they'll have like 45 sacks, 1 million pressures, won't mean anything. It's like, what the hell, man?
Oh my god, I just
yeah,
that would be insane. That would be hilarious though, like what you said about Sweat being with the Eagles. I could see them running like Sweat, Carter, and Davis all on the field at the same time, and it's like the anti-tush push. Like you cannot.
That might be the only thing that could stop the tush push.
You have Sweat at the 1 tech, Davis at the 3 and Carter at the 5, and just
Yep.
have them all on the field at the same time. And it's
Yep.
just like whichever edge rusher you want to put out, it doesn't matter what he might not even have to do anything because it depends on what happens. But that's literally what it would be like. It'd be hilarious. Yeah, it'd be funny. I just want to throw that out there. But that'll do it for us this week. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next week to do the edge rankings. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm very curious how we kind of shuffle out the top of that group, I think, because it depends on what you look for and what you care about. But definitely get into that. So we'll talk more about them. There's one other player, too, that I mentioned for next week that I'm really curious. I'll talk to you guys after the show, so it'll be a spoiler for you guys next week. Plays for we'll say a white and blue team that I don't know how we're going to settle on what his potential floor and ceiling is. But we'll get to that later. But we'll talk to you guys next week. We'll try to be on around 2 p.m. Sunday is what we're supposed to be. I know that doesn't happen a lot of the time, but again, we have stuff that I got to do, so it is what it is. Spoiler, kind of like behind the scenes, I got here about an hour before the show started. I was not in the same city that I normally am in, so that was fun. We got it done, right? We got the show started. So, all right, we'll see you guys next week, and thank you again for joining us.
See you guys.